When my husband walked through the door that winter evening and found me lying on the kitchen floor surrounded by the bruises his brothers had left on me, I thought, foolish as I was, that he had finally come home to protect me. But he just glanced at me, shook his head, and said, "You let them get you down this fast? I expected more endurance from you." And that, my dear ones, was the day I realized hell didn't have 3 devils. It had 4, and I had married their leader. Now, before I continue, my loves, if Grandma Nora's story is already tugging at your heart, take a second, just a tiny second, to subscribe to Grandma Untold True Stories, give this old lady a like, and tap that notification bell so you don't miss the next tale from this porch here in Redwood Hollow. Alright, settle in. Get your warm tea or your late evening coffee. Because today's story is heavy, but it's also about freedom, courage, and the strange ways life teaches us we can be reborn. My name is Nora Whitford, but everyone here in Redwood Hollow simply calls me Grandma Nora. I'm 79 years old now, living quietly in this little cedar house tucked into the hills of northern Arkansas. Every morning, before the sun even decides what it's doing, I water my violets by the kitchen window, brew my chicory coffee, and sit on my porch swing to watch the fog lift off the valley. It's peaceful. A peace I never knew in the long years I'm about to tell you about. Back in 1968, when I was a young woman of 22, grown, but still foolish enough to think love could fix anything, I married a man named Harold Whitford. Tall, charming, always speaking softly, like he didn't want to disturb the air around him. He swept me off my feet faster than I had time to think, and faster still. I found myself living on his family's farm miles away from my parents, miles away from anyone who could hear me if I called for help. Harold lived with his 3 brothers, Joseph, Marshall, and Elias. They were older than him, stronger than him, and carried themselves like the whole county owed them gratitude for existing. At first, they barely spoke to me. Just stared with that quiet judgment men wear when they think a woman belongs beneath their boots. The first year wasn't terrible. It wasn't good, but I survived it. Harold wasn't affectionate, but he wasn't cruel, not at first. He worked long days baling hay and repairing fences, coming home with that tired look men get when they've convinced themselves exhaustion is the same as virtue. But his brothers. They watched me. Watched how I cleaned, how I cooked, how I walked, as though they were tallying my existence on some invisible ledger. Then one evening, one I'll never forget, Harold didn't come home. He had gone into town to buy spare parts, he said. But instead of seeing him walk through the door, I saw Joseph, the oldest, standing there with a belt in his hand. "You're part of this family now," he said. "And in this family, discipline runs down the line." My dear ones, that night was the beginning of years of torment that still echo in my bones. The brothers said Harold gave permission, that he told them to keep me in line when he wasn't home. I didn't believe it at first. Not my husband. Not the man who'd held my hands and called me his girl. But when Harold finally returned the next day, I stood there trembling, bruised from shoulder to hip, waiting for the fury, the outrage, the protection. He looked at me, looked at them, and said, "If she wants to stay in this house, she'll learn." That was the day my marriage died, but I was still trapped inside its corpse. For years, my days looked like this: wake up before dawn. Cook for 4 grown men who never said thank you. Scrub floors until my knees felt like hot stones. Listen to the brothers invent reasons to correct me, the stew too thin, the towels folded wrong, or simply that my silence annoyed them. When Harold traveled, which was often, the brothers did whatever they pleased. Sometimes it was chores they piled so high I thought my spine would snap. Sometimes it was words sharp enough to cut. Sometimes worse. It wears a woman down, my loves. It cracks her spirit like dry wood. There were nights I lay in that narrow bed thinking the world would be kinder if I simply vanished. But God, or fate, or stubbornness, whatever you want to call it, kept me breathing. And then came the night everything shattered. It was January of 1977. A night so cold the pipes froze and the windows sweated ice. Harold had been gone 3 days. The brothers had been drinking, laughing loud, arguing louder. I was in the kitchen, cleaning the stove for the second time that day because Marshall said it smelled like laziness, when Joseph slammed the door and shouted, "Harold's back." My knees nearly buckled with relief. I thought, foolish me, that maybe this time he'd see what they had done. I wiped my hands, straightened my dress, and stepped into the hallway. And there he was. Snow on his shoulders. Steam curling off his coat. Eyes colder than the night behind him. He looked at me on the floor, looked at Joseph holding that cursed leather belt, and he said, "This is all you managed in 3 days? My dear ones," that sentence tore the breath from my body. Not, "What did you do to her?" Not, "Get away from her." Just, disappointment. Not for me, for them. He walked toward me, his boots thudding like death knocking on wood. He grabbed my arm and pulled me forward. I stumbled, gasped, tried to find my footing. Then he spoke so softly it was worse than shouting.
"A woman who still has strength left ain't been corrected properly." I felt the world tilt. Everything in me went quiet, cold, ill. Because I understood then, fully finally, that Harold hadn't become like his brothers. They had become like him. The hours after that. My dear ones, I won't paint them in detail. Some things are too heavy for spoken memory. But what I will say is that when it was over and I was lying on that wooden floor, barely breathing, barely anything, I felt something spark inside me. Not hope, not yet. Hope was too delicate a word for what rose up inside my broken ribs. It was defiance. Cold, sharp, life-saving defiance. If I stay, I thought, they will bury me before spring. So I decided, quietly, secretly, that I would leave. Not someday. Not eventually. A week later, when the brothers rode into town for supplies and Harold was out repairing a distant fence line, I took the chance God placed in my shaking hands. I packed a small canvas bag. 2 dresses, a loaf of cornbread wrapped in cloth, a jar of apples Mrs. Lacey from the neighboring farm had given me months before. And I walked. On legs that trembled. On feet that bled inside cheap shoes. But I walked. 5 miles to the old railroad crossing. Another 3 to the service road. Until finally, just past dawn, a woman driving a delivery truck slowed beside me. Her name was Beatrice and she said, "My lord, honey. You look like you've wrestled a ghost. Get in." She didn't ask questions. Not until I was ready. And when I finally told her, not everything but enough, she pressed her hand over mine and said, "You're safe now." I stayed with Beatrice for 4 months. She helped me get work cleaning rooms at a roadside inn. She helped me open my first bank account. She helped me stand on my own 2 feet again. And I never ever went back. Not once. Not for a belonging. Not for a memory. Not even for closure. I built a life from scratch. Hard years, yes, but peaceful ones. I worked in 3 towns across Arkansas, saved every penny, and at 58, I bought this little cedar house you see behind me now. Plant violets. I crochet blankets for the church bazaar. I drink chicory coffee and watch the sun climb over the ridge each morning. I have neighbors who love me and children, not by blood but by heart, who visit to hear my stories and eat my molasses cookies. I have peace. And my dear ones, peace is a treasure greater than anything that farm ever had. If you're living something like I lived, if there's fear in your house where there should be rest, I want you to hear me, you're not alone. There is a way out. There are hands ready to help you. And you deserve, truly deserve, a life without fear. Before I end this story, my loves, let me make a gentle request. If Grandma Nora's words reached your heart today, please subscribe to Grandma Untold True Stories, turn on that little bell, and leave a single word in the comments that reflects what you felt. Strength, freedom, courage, peace, whatever your heart whispers. Your words may be the lifeline someone else needs. Thank you, my dear ones. May God warm your heart tonight, and may you always remember, choosing yourself is never a sin. It is salvation. A kiss to each one of you from Grandma Nora.